This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And we are here for another edition of the Primetime Podcast, right here on Most Valuable Podcast. The one thing I will say about our podcast, Brandon, is I always feel like I'm being a little bit redundant at the beginning because I say the Primetime Podcast on Most Valuable Podcasts. I feel like I'm saying podcast too close to each other. Just a random thought I had right now at the beginning of this podcast. But we are changing things up a little bit. Originally, we were going to do the Big Ten East. Matt was able to call in today. We're going to have him on later. So we're calling it audible. We're going to do the Big Ten West this week. Next week, we will do the Big Ten East, or as I like to call it, what division, Brandon?
The Beast.
The Beast, because it has all the beasts in that division.
But before
we get started, how we do the previews, if you're new, is we start from the bottom, go all the way to the top. So we'll start with Illinois, go all the way through the standings, end with the Wisconsin Badgers, and then we will go through each team. What do we like? What do we don't like? What do we expect? But before we get into everything, a little bit of housekeeping here at the beginning. If you want to be like Matt and be on a podcast and help support MVP, make sure to check out our Patreon page that is down below in the description, patreon.com/most valuable podcast. Also, you can help us out and rep the channel by buying an MVP t-shirt. That store is in the description, or you can go to mostvaluablepodcast.com where you can get the store as well. Most Valuable Podcast is also where you can catch MVP each and every day. And then last but not least, if you're on Apple Podcasts, you have Apple Podcasts, you have iTunes, or you're on iTunes, make sure to rate the Primetime Podcast 5 stars on iTunes. Let us know what you dig about the show. I looked recently. Overall, the Primetime Podcast has a 4.5 out of 5, which is really good. But our only comment is still that good old boys comment, where I guess we're a couple of good old boys that only talk about the SEC. But guess what? We're not talking about the SEC today, Brandon. We are looking at the Big Ten. Let's get right into it. We're going to start with the Illinois Fighting Illini. I am going to hit you like this segment for me, just bias be known. I'm an Illinois fan, so this might be very therapeutic for me, or it may not. We'll find out at the end. But Brandon, I'm going to throw you the first question because I can't throw it to myself. Lovie Smith. This will be his third year in Champaign. He went 3-9, 2-10 last year. He is a total of 5-19, 2-16. Those 2 wins in conference coming in year 1 in 2016. What do you think, if you're looking into your crystal ball, what will be Lovie Smith's fate this season, and can he survive a third season in your mind?
Ricky, it's really tough. The most excitement that this team has had around Lovie Smith was when they heard he was getting hired.
I was so excited.
That's the most excitement. Mm-hmm. He hasn't brought any excitement with the talent that he's brought or with the wins that he's brought, because he's only brought 5 in 2 seasons. Yeah. And this third season doesn't give you a whole lot of hope. Mm-hmm. At least not in my mind. I mean, I know you're the guy who's really close to mm-hmm. Illinois. You're the really big Illinois fan, but you look at this team and you already think, okay, they've got to fix the quarterback situation. If they cannot do that, then really everything else from there is going to be a struggle. So this is going to be tough for Lovie. If this season goes very similar to the last 2 seasons, I think Lovie Smith may only have a 3-year run at Illinois. And at the end of the day, maybe Lovie Smith only should have a 3-year run at Illinois if he does have a poor season this year. Because Illinois has been really poor for too long at football. There has been really, like I said, limited excitement, limited attendance at games. I still remember the game I was at last season. It was the Rutgers game. Illinois lost to Rutgers. It was really bad. They played very poorly. Mm-hmm. It was not a full student section to start the game, and by halftime, they couldn't even put an eye up in the student section. That's how bad it was.
It was like the Northwestern game a couple of years ago too. It happens. And it sucks for the team. But
so that's a story for a different day. For a guy like Lovie Smith, who's got NFL prominence, for a guy who had a lot of success actually in the NFL. When the Bears fired him, he had a winning season.
Yeah, I blame the Buccaneers.
And
they ruined him. The Buccaneers and Jameis Winston ruined Lovie Smith.
And I guess I look at this and one more season of 3 wins or 2 wins, if there's no improvement. I mean, 4 wins this season, Lovey's going to stay because you've improved. You jumped up. You've done better than you have in each of your first 2 years. But if they stay the same way, the same mediocrity, worse than mediocre, that they have the last 2 seasons, I personally, I think I would get rid of Lovey because you can't wait then another season to, maybe he'll get it together. No, you got to bring in somebody else who can get it together. And like with Jeff Brom, you don't necessarily need Illinois to go 6-6, but gosh, 5 wins would be nice. 4 wins would be nice. And then be able to build on that for the next season. When you win 3, okay, that's not good. But then you win 2 the next year. You literally got worse. So Lovey right now, hot seat for me. And I think after year 3, if he does not improve, he's gone.
Well, I want to get to the one question or the one statement you said at the beginning. Or question, yeah. What is there to be excited about for Illinois football this season? And for me, it is very, very easy for me to tell you what is there to be excited about. And for me, it comes down to 2 wide receivers, Mikey Dudek and Ricky Smalling. These guys, I am expecting, first off with Dudek, this was a guy I saw come in, Neuqua Valley product, come in in 2014. My first thought was, you know what? This guy, he's not very tall, for a wide receiver or even a football player. 5'11", it's holy crap, he's 3 inches taller than me. He's not that much taller than I am. But that first year, 2014, he just blew it out of the water. And it was a season where he played 13 games, over 1,000 yards. He was very excited, had 1,111 yards from scrimmage. And I was like, yes, this is a wide receiver that we need. He's going to help the team. 2015 comes, and he's injured. Fuck, he's injured. ACL injury. 2016 comes. Damn it, another ACL injury. So for me, last year, played 7 games, but we didn't really get that full sample from my Dudek. I want to see, first off, that's the question. Can he stay healthy? Because, like I said, lost a 2015 season, lost a 2016 season. One of those seasons I know he redshirted so that he wouldn't lose a year of eligibility. But it's he is one where if he can stay healthy, he can be a weapon for this Illinois team. Then the other one I mentioned, where this one kind of hits a little bit close for home for us because we're in the Chicagoland area, and this is, I know, back in the day when we used to follow the Chicago high school football scene when both you and I were in college, this is a guy from our backyard in Ricky Smalling, where he's from the Chicagoland area. Last year had 510 yards in 11 games, but was only a freshman. It was his first year, getting acclimated to Big Ten play. Plus, let's really be honest, that the Illinois team that we put out there last season, I wasn't super excited about that quarterback play that we had, either between Jeff George Jr. or Couch, and Cam Thomas kind of came in. And to me, that's the answer. You got Cam Thomas coming in. It is now his sophomore year. Really, to me, it's his job to lose. He's got the job unless he royally screws it up. This could be a year offensively where Lovie Smith gets it going. He could have, and this is ideally, and I know I'm talking as an Illinois fan, and you're going to come in here and be more realistic, and please do. But if this is the perfect year, this kind of trio this year, I would not be surprised if Cam Thomas, along with Dudek and Smalling, if they're both 1,000-yard receivers this year. The thing that's going to derail that, though, is can Illinois get a run game, because we haven't had an 1,000-yard rusher in what seems like forever. It's at least been since 2013, 2012. because I, in the recent history, haven't thought that any of our running backs have gone over 1,000 yards, and that I think will be the Achilles heel for this offense, will be the running backs.
Now, if people haven't said it already, or screamed it, or shouted it, or sworn it in a comment to me, they've said that, Brandon, you've been really tough on Lovie Smith, but look at what he's had to work with. He has dealt with consistent injuries in his first 2 seasons. His players have been constantly, and that is completely true, constantly injured at all different positions, especially when you look on the offensive side. At wide receiver and at running back, certainly. I mean, last year they had 4 running backs. They couldn't keep them all healthy.
They were all injured.
I mean, so that's, if they had 4 of them that combined for 800 yards because of injuries. And they haven't had someone who's hit 1,000 yards since around the 2010 season. That again is there's too many things too many stats and too many things that you see for Illinois that are just unacceptable. And then you look at it and you go, well, no wonder they haven't won. They're not even hitting the marks that a typical running back or wide receiver or whatever should hit. I mean, they can't even get to that mark. They can't even get to the century mark. So I think that's where it's like I think. For Illinois, if they can keep these guys healthy, if you look at least on the offensive side of things, if you can stick with one guy at quarterback, again, too, I mean, I know that you're saying Cam Thomas for now, but he's, there's a number of other guys. There's MJ Rivers, Matt Robinson, AJ Bush.
Taylor.
They've got a number of different guys there. So that's first and foremost for me, looking at it, you have got to figure it out at quarterback. With that many guys, with that big of a competition, there's got to be somebody who's going to rise to the top. But you need to figure that out sooner than later so that they can develop a good rapport with these guys in the running back position, certainly at the wide receiver position. But before you jump in, I do want to say, Dudek, if he can stay healthy, is going to be so good. He's going to be so good.
If he's on the field for every game this year, I would put... What do I want to put on it? I'm trying to think of a bet. I don't want to be like I'll shave my head. If he plays every game this year, I would be very confident for him to be an 1,000-yard receiver. Only because I've seen it before. I've seen him be an 1,000-yard receiver when he's healthy, and that was as a freshman. We don't see freshmen usually come in and do that. The thing I was going to ask you is, let's say I'm using Cam Thomas as a starter for now because of this. We're bringing in a new offensive coordinator. We're bringing in Rod Smith, who was the assistant with Arizona last year. And one of the things that I like about this is if Cam Thomas is the guy, I personally feel like Rod Smith may be the one to be the best fit with Cam Thomas and get the most out of him. Because out of last year, out of our quarterbacks, the quarterback who had the most rushing yards and who was the most mobile was Cam Thomas. He had, 52 carries last year officially, 233 yards, which was good for third on our total rushing list last year, and he wasn't even our full-time starter at quarterback for every game. When I look at last year and you look at Arizona's stats, this is a team that didn't do bad last year. They got 5 wins, which for Illinois fans would be like, thank you, please get us 5 wins. It's close to a bowl game, and then I can hope for one in 2019. But he had Khalil Tate, and we talked about Khalil Tate last year with Arizona. He was a guy that had about 1,500 yards, almost 1,600 yards through the air last year, but also about 1,400 yards on the ground. And I'm not saying Cam Thomas will do that same thing, but could Rod Smith be the guy to get the most out of Cam Thomas and be like, all right, I've worked with a dual threat quarterback like Khalil Tate. This guy is going to fit my offense nicely that I want to put into place here in Champaign.
Well, Cam Thomas, first and foremost, he's got to be a guy who already has those skills and those talents, which it seems like he does, but it seems like, again, he's hasn't been the full-time quarterback. Obviously, with now just being a sophomore, he has an opportunity to be that full-time quarterback if he's the one who ends up being the guy. And if that's the case, then Smith is going to have a really good opportunity to work with him and for Cam to get even better here. So it's good that Smith has that experience, but it's all going to be in the guy, his progression, how he's able to learn, how, what he's willing to do, what he's comfortable with, what he's not comfortable with. That's going to be the first and foremost thing. But he's going to have to be, I think, yes, you want a guy in a dual threat quarterback. You want him to be able to do both things, but I think it's right now really important for Illinois to be able to open up the offense, spread the ball down the field, be able to do some big plays and produce some big plays. Again, with Dudek kind of being the guy, because I look at him, there's been so many good flashes from him. We've seen so many flashes, but again, so many injuries. To be able to get a full season or close to a full season from Mike Dudek, that I think then puts confidence into the quarterback that they can rely on this guy. They're going to go to this guy. This is going to be a go-to guy, and you've got a rapport with him. So that's I think the number one thing. And while you may be wanting Smith to, okay, you want to see 1,500 pass yards out of Thomas. You want to see 1,400 rush yards out of him. I'm just
using that as like a model, not as a target.
Sure. I would say I want to see him be more of a quarterback here because Illinois needs more of a quarterback. They need a guy who is able to get his receivers the ball, get them involved, and move the ball down the field. That's what they've been missing. They've been missing someone who can just move the ball down the field. And for him to be a dual threat, where he can do it himself as well with his legs, that's very important. But I think, number one, he's got to develop the rapport with the receivers and the running backs, too, because Lovie Smith wants his running backs to be catching the football. That's number one.
Well, and a quote from Lovie on that, running backs catching the football, he said in that quote, it's a priority. Like, that's the one thing he's been saying. And for me, the one thing out of the quarterback, before I get on into the defense, because I want to talk about them a little bit, the last two things I'll say about the offense is, one, from the quarterback, the main thing I expect and want this year is don't turn over the damn ball. Last year, if I go through the numbers, Jeff George Jr., 10 interceptions, only gave me 7 touchdowns. Crouch had 4 interceptions. Thomas had 5 interceptions, and Thomas didn't even throw a touchdown pass last year. Cam Thomas only had 1 on the ground as well. So for the offensive quarterback, get your guys the ball, get in the end zone. Number 2, don't give the other team the ball. And I know that's like, duh, Ricky, that's how you play football. But for a team like Illinois, I feel like you got to dumb it down that low sometimes. The last thing I'll say about the offense is the offensive line. It'll be interesting to see them because last year they were starting 4 freshmen and a guy who I was like, holy crap, he's still on this team because I remember covering the recruiting class that he came in when I was with writingillini.com for the fan-sided side of things. Nick Allegretti is the only senior on that offensive line, so it'll be interesting to see how they improve in 2018, but like using that to segue into the defense, to me, the 2 points with the defense, it's simple. Number one, they were inexperienced last year. They were starting a ton of freshmen. If I just go through our depth chart, both of our defensive ends were freshmen last year. 2 out of our 3 linebackers were freshmen last year. You have our nickelback was a freshman. You have one of our safeties and one of our cornerbacks was a freshman last year. Like, these are guys that were in the starting lineup for most of the part. And I look at right now, it looks like we're going to have like maybe 3 juniors and 1 transfer senior be the starters for this defense. So for me, that's the one thing is this defense still going to be way too inexperienced, having a bunch of sophomores? And number 3, I mean, yes, our defensive coordinator, Nickerson, has hit on it when he goes, like, he wants to really improve on first and second down run game. And me as a fan, I just look at that and go, well, when are we? Because it seems like since like 2012, 2013, Big Ten running backs have just come in. And like, I remember watching Melvin Gordon come in playoffs. It's like, oh, we can beat Wisconsin, and Melvin Gordon torched us. Or it's like, oh, they have a good running back, we're not going to win this game. So, I mean, that's the big thing for me is how does this defense get more how do they play as a more experienced unit in year 2, because most of them were freshmen? And also, can we kind of stand up against the run? Because like I said, or I'm going to say in the Purdue segment, because we kind of record them out of order, the Big Ten usually has running backs that can do their job, especially other teams have had running backs that can do their job.
So, Ricky, one of the things with Illinois that I want to bring up and that I noticed big time in the game that I was at last season, I know that you can't, you can't go by just one game, but this is all I have to go by of games that I actually saw live in person. Illinois needs to stop somebody on third down. That was one of the biggest things, is that
got to get them off the field.
They could not get their defense off the field. And on third down, Rutgers was not only converting, but they were getting big plays, like chunks, like 12 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards on third down. Illinois last season, they ranked 105th on third down conversion percentage as a defense. Teams were converting on third down almost 44% of the time. That's too high. That is way too high. You are allowing way too much good to happen for the other team on third down. A huge down for your defense. And for a team like Illinois, where you've been struggling, you haven't been good, you need your offense to get the ball, you're probably down. Your defense cannot be doing that. So they have got to stop somebody on third down this season. That 105th rank has got to be better. They have got to be better. Because if they're not, we're yet again going to see Lovey's team struggle mightily.
I see 2 wins. Like,
boy.
I'm looking at the schedule, and first off, the first 3 games to me reminds me of, what year was it? I think it was 2015. No, 2014. I was off by a year, wasn't I? No, it was 2013. 2013. I'll take you back in the Wayback Machine. Was it 2013? 2013 or 2014? I think it was 20. Let's see where this game was played. It doesn't matter. They both turned out the same way. 2013, 2014. We had a home and away against Washington. The 2013 season's the one I'm thinking about, though, because it was here at home. But just hear me out here. We play Southern Illinois week 1 that year. We win. We play Cincinnati that next week. We win. We start the year 2-0. We're feeling confident. Then we come in September 14th. It was a Saturday night, like a Saturday twilight game, I think is the right time for it, where it was like the sun's just coming down in Chicago. It ended just before nightfall against number 19 Washington. And this game was in Chicago. And I'm hyped. I'm like, cool. This is where we put Illinois on the map. We put on a show for all these Chicago recruits. Tim Beckman's going to get it done. And we lost 34-24, but the game was not really that close throughout the entire thing. I see this year. Oh, by the way, little trivia question for you. Can you tell me who the running back was for the Huskies that year? I'll give you a hint. He was drafted by the Titans and never panned out in the NFL.
What year was that?
2013. He is currently on the Minnesota Vikings. He played 3 years for Washington at running back. And he played 2 years for the Tennessee Titans in 2014 and 2015. He was a second-round pick for the Titans in 2014.
I'm trying to think of guys that didn't pan out for the Titans. I don't know.
You're Catholic, right?
Yeah.
His first name is a title within the Catholic religion. Starts with a B. It's also a name of a chess piece. This piece usually moves diagonally. His first name's Bishop. Do you remember his last name?
Bishop Sankey.
Bishop Sankey was their running back for Washington. It was his second year at Washington before his last year. And, like, I was confident.
He was on my fantasy team at one point, and man, he stunk. He was terrible.
But he was good in college. I was confident going into halftime because we were only down 10-3, and I'm like, cool, we got this. And then they tore the doors open. They scored 21 points on us. Yeah, we kept to 14, but we never really had that game in it. But my point is, getting to a point, I can see this being the same way as that season, the first 3 games. I can see us beating Kent State. I can see us beating the Leathernecks of Western Illinois. And then we play Charlie Strong and his South Florida Bulls in Chicago. You got to win. Like, if you're Lovey, you have to win that game. And I know we lost to South Florida last year, but you have to win that game, especially when, I believe when Lovey came in, one of the big things he talked about was kind of getting a stranglehold on the Chicago recruiting scene. If you're going to come and play in Chicago...
Is that where they're playing? They're playing in Chicago?
For that South Florida game, it is in Chicago.
Are they playing at Soldier Field?
I believe so. I believe that is in Soldier Field. It is definitely in Chicago, though, for sure. And cool. I look at that game and I go, you have to win that game. You have to win it. Yeah, it's at Soldier Field. Soldier Field on September 15th. It's going to be a 2:30 kickoff.
So, Ricky, here's what I want to get to. So, I know I mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast when you asked me my question. I think, if Lovey doesn't get anything going here in year 3, I mean, if he doesn't, in my opinion, if he doesn't have 4 wins, why keep him? Why retain him? But then here's going to be the question of the fans. Here's going to be the question of the critics. Here's going to be then I think, I want to say the defense of then people who want to try and keep Lovey on. It's that, well, they gave him a 6-year contract.
Yeah.
Some people are going to say, you know what? They gave him a 6-year contract because they didn't expect him to get a whole lot done in his first couple of years. There's the defense. The critics and the critique will be, okay, but you're not seeing any movement. You're not seeing any progress forward. Why keep on a guy who cannot at least build each year? And then you'll see people who say, well, history shows that Illinois head coaches have done really well in year 3. So give him at least this year because he'll be able to turn it around. And then if he doesn't, if he breaks the mold, that was Ron Turner, Ron Zook, and what's his face? Who was the last guy? Tim Beckman.
Well, don't forget. Well, technically, it was Bill Cubitt because Cubitt had a year after Tim Beckman.
Okay. So if it doesn't happen then this year for Lovey where he has success, the question might be and might come again from the critics, well, he broke that mold. When is the success going to come? But you look at that 6-year contract, and I think it's okay to break it. It's okay to break that 6-year contract. If he is not the guy that's panning out for you, why keep on a guy that's not going to bring you constant and consistent success? And Ricky, as a fan, and I know it's not all about what the fans think, but as a fan, you have got to be frustrated. You started out 3-9. Okay, that's not good. But you know you weren't going to be great right away. You got to get to the next point. What's the next point for Illinois? It was 2 wins. You went backwards. And now you've got year 3, and maybe I'm, just ranting here, and Illinois is going to win 6 games this season, but I highly doubt it.
We're not going to win 6 games this year, but this year for sure, kind of to Quentin Tarantino bring this whole podcast full circle. Question I asked you at the beginning. Does Lovey last through this year? Yes. And the reason why I say yes is because for me, the biggest thing from last year, you can't expect that team last year to win games. Why? Not only the injuries, I'm not even going to mention because every team gets injured. But for me, the big part of it is most of our team was inexperienced. 4 out of 5 offensive linemen were freshmen. I would be generous and say half of our defense were freshmen last year. the majority of our players last year that got time were freshmen. So in this third year, what's the expectation for those freshmen now in sophomore year? To me, I think the judgment year is next year. The year you're talking about, because I don't care that he got 6 years. If you're not getting it done after 4, something needs to be reevaluated here. Like the years on a contract, I know like contract and money, like if you get rid of them beforehand, you got to give them the money. I don't care about that because I don't have to deal with that. I just, as a fan, want to see W's on my computer screen and not big fat red L's. And for me, I feel like next year will be the year where it's like, hey, you know what? Lovie Smith, what are you going to do? Because most of those freshmen are now going to be juniors. When they're upperclassmen, that's a different story. You're bringing in a guy to be your offensive coordinator that you feel like will do better because Lovie's never been an offensive-minded guy. He's always been a defensive-minded guy. This doesn't help this year, but I want to throw this out. I want to throw out just to end this segment, I want to throw out a big what if. And I want you to give me your thoughts on it and if I'm crazy for thinking this. If Lovie, let's say, can't get it done this year, they get 2 wins this year, and can't get it done next year. If Jim Harbaugh is fired by Michigan at the end of next year, should Illinois make a hard play at it? And could we eventually see Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines in Champaign?
All right, so I don't think Jim Harbaugh is going to be fired. So that doesn't.
No, I'm not saying fired after this year, after next year.
I know, but I guess I see him turning it around. You know, Michigan had a down season. I would see him probably turning it around. But would Illinois and should Illinois make a hard push for him?
The first one's yes.
Yes. Should they? Yes. But I don't think that you will probably ever see Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines of Illinois. I don't think it would. I don't think it would happen. I don't think it would happen. And now, what some people have said,
he'll go to Seattle and take Pete Carroll's job just to give Pete Carroll one more dagger in the side.
But what I was going to say is that at the same time, I guess a lot of times you wouldn't have thought, I didn't think that Jim Harbaugh would have left the 49ers and then gone and been with Michigan. But he did. And he turned that Michigan program around pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's where you look at you look at some of that success versus the non-successes. Jim Harbaugh, he was a college guy. He went into the NFL, and he had success in the NFL. And he had, unfortunately, a poor run-in with ownership. He leaves there. He goes back to college, and he has fairly quick success with Michigan. And he's a great recruiter, so that really helped. Lovie Smith, he was an NFL guy. He had success with the Chicago Bears. Hold on, I've got a good point. I'm on a roll here, so let me keep going. And then he has success there. He's fired after a successful season with the Bears. They've been terrible since. And he comes to Illinois, and I think that sometimes, one, you're excited because you're getting a head coach that was from the NFL, that knows what he's doing, that's had success, that's had good defenses. We've got him. He's going to be good.
And we'd expect recruits wanting to play for him.
Yes, and guys will want to play for this guy. Oh, he's not having success like Harbaugh had. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also where fans get a little, what's going on? Because you want to make the parallels. And I get it.
You can't.
But you can't do it.
And the reason
you can't do it.
The reason why you can't is Illinois is a completely different team than Michigan. Michigan had more pieces for Harbaugh to work with, whereas, like, we were even talking about after Beckman, the whole thing that went on and why he got fired. It was like an exodus. Players were transferring because they saw it as a toxic situation.
Which it was.
And by the time Illinois cut the head off cut the head off the fish. The fish had
the dragon, the fish, the lizard.
The fish had already rotted from the head down. So like Lovie wasn't coming into the best situation in general. The one thing I want to correct you is when you said Lovie wasn't a college guy. Yes, this is his first head coaching college job, but he was a college assistant from 1983 to 1995. I know it's been a while, but he was like a linebackers coach in that at like Ohio State, Arizona State, before going on to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneer linebacking coach.
I guess
96.
my reference was more to the head coaching, which where Harbaugh had been, and Lovey had not.
Like, I'll be completely honest. My reference is that too. Like, he was 5. I was 5 when he wasn't 5. I was 5 when Lovey Smith was at Ohio State. But I just wanted we may have older listeners who may be like, whoa, don't be. He was in college, but this is his first head coaching stint where more responsibility than just a linebacking coach in college. But this is probably going to be our longest one just because I'm an Illinois fan and this is very therapeutic for me.
Was it therapeutic? Do you feel better?
A little bit. Here's the last question I want to ask you. And I'm going to ask you this on the air to kind of put some pressure on you.
You always do.
This is the September 15th game at Soldier Field between South Florida and Illinois. Just so you know, grandstand seats, row 8, we can go $65 a pop. So if you're interested, we can go see Illinois and Charlie Strong, Lovey Smith and Charlie Strong, butt heads at Soldier Field on September 15th.
Well, maybe we could. Maybe then we could just stay down there. Maybe the Bears are playing that weekend, and we could get some Bears tickets.
Maybe we could.
Maybe we could. We would be poor after, of course, but we could try to do it.
You know what? Right on this preview, we're just going to go ahead and look. Are the Bears, that would be week 2 of the football season. I'm going to look that up right now. We're going to make those plans right now. They are at home, but it's not. It's the Monday night game, I believe.
They're playing the Seattle Seahawks.
That's a Monday nighter. So it's not a Sunday game. It's a Monday game that week for the Bears. But this is where you guys
We'd have to take off work.
Illinois
Bummer.
fans,
That'd be so tough.
And let us know what you think. What are you excited for? What are you not excited for? Do you want Lovey to be fired? Because there's that camp out there. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section.